say goodbye to Splitgate? I think we need to start saying hello again to Splitgate. Splitgate 2 kind of got teased here a little bit in a recent event here. And if you're not aware what Splitgate is, it started as a college game dev project. It is a game that mixes the arena shooter vibes of old school Unreal and Quake, but with some of the twitchier elements and the rock, paper, scissors weapon balance of a game like Halo, and throws in portals as a way of moving around the map to kind of appeal more towards the modern movement-focused shooter play that something like a modern Call of Duty has. It's a wonderful blend of a lot of different elements and allows for some really creative and action-packed gameplay. It is one of my favorite shooters of all time. It has been free to play for a very long time. I supported it way back when it was like in beta or alpha. I saw it at DreamHack before it was released. I've been around with this game a long time. I am a huge, huge fan. I made a bunch of videos on it, and it is a game that appeals to everything I love about first-person shooters. It started out as a very just kind of small indie game, but in like, I think 2020 or 2021, it started getting a ton of coverage after a big update. And with there being like Halo got delayed, so a bunch of that audience went over and played there, and the game blew up. And as a result, 1047 Games, the development studio behind it, got a bunch of investment and really ballooned as a developer to start investing more in the game. And I think overall they did a great job. They invested in a lot more creative relations and like tournaments. They built a map editor and supported it with a bunch of new content. They started revamping the brand identity, because the game just didn't really have like a core look to it yet at the time. But this is my speculation based on conversations I had. It felt like they reached a point where they were too held back by whatever they had made back when the game was a like two-person college project, and they needed to kind of start over a bit to really make the game they wanted to make. And so last year, I guess, they announced that they were ceasing development on it, and all of their plans that they had already announced were being moved to a new Splitgate title in Unreal Engine 5. And this created a lot of drama, which I'll talk about in a moment, but we did just get a peek at Splitgate 2. This isn't officially confirmed, but like you can tell. This is the new game. We've got things like crazier light reflections, we've got a new looking pistol, we've got new portal walls. Like, I am fairly convinced that this little Hall of Fame that they did at the end of their Splitgate Awards show, and as they're saying goodbye to Splitgate, this is our first little peek at Splitgate 2. And I'll link you to BBK Dragoon's video for a full breakdown of the little details in the trailer. But I want to talk about what I want my priorities to be for Splitgate 2. If I had my personal wish list, one of my biggest videos on this channel for a while was basically my list of things that I thought felt wrong about Splitgate at the time, most or many of which have been fixed. So this one I want to talk about what I want to see for Splitgate 2, keeping in mind that Splitgate has now become one of my favorite FPSs of all time. So maintaining what is there is an assumed default for me. But in line with that, my first one is that I think they should keep the mouse and controller feel, the responsiveness. I had some issues in the early days with the responsiveness of a couple guns, and they actually worked to fix that, and now it feels amazing. I want them to keep that controller feel, and that feel, mouse and keyboard feel, specifically mouse and keyboard. And I'm saying this even though it seems super obvious, but that was a huge issue with Halo for me. Halo Master Chief Collection moved to PC, and I expected it to feel horrible, and it felt incredible. Halo 3 and the Master Chief Collection is one of the most responsive feeling mouse and keyboard first-person shooters I've ever played. Then Halo Infinite came out, and it felt absolutely trash on mouse and keyboard. They have fixed it up, worked on it. It has started feeling a lot better. But for over a year, it just felt awful on mouse and keyboard. I really don't want to see that happen with Splitgate. One of the biggest things about Splitgate for me was the very low latency for render times and things like that I used it as my examples for like my CRT versus OLED gaming comparisons, and just how responsive it felt on the mouse and keyboard. It is one of the games I can perform my absolute best at when I'm not rusty, because of the game just gets out of your way. That has to be a priority, or the game should not ship IMO. I also think, given the state that most other games launch at these days, they need to not target a live service model in that they launch with only a couple features and start adding it in later. I think that will burn given that it is still a smaller niche game, I think that will burn any like interest and awareness whenever they first launch if they don't have everything ready. So that means for me, they need to have a map editor and a way to share out custom content ready to go day one. Like, they have to have those core features ready to go. It's great if they develop new stuff and add it in over time, obviously. But things that they already have in the first game that allow for the great sandbox and social multiplayer experience all have to be transferred over. And I think they should have some degree of separation between the creative sandbox play and the hardcore, more ranked style play, which they currently have. I think the game will need some sort of ethical progression system. It kind of has that now. Like, they have a little bit of a loot box system, and you could spend money for it, but like for the it's all cosmetics in the first place. There is nothing that actually affects your gameplay whatsoever. So that's obviously a good check. But it has its roots so deep in that arena style play where, you know, back in the day, we didn't have progression. We didn't have anything to unlock or whatever. It's an issue I have going back to something like Team Fortress 2, in that the game hasn't changed that much, but there's also no reward for playing more. There's the RNG of like getting hats or something, but that's and weapon skins, but that's so random if you don't bot it that it doesn't feel good. So I want there to be some sort of ethical, you know, not predatory progression system that gives people a little bit of a grind to do if they want to, but not to be pressured into it with FOMO like most of the Battle Pass systems do. I think Splitgate 1 currently does a great job at this. Like, I love logging in and just seeing the challenges I have and hacking away at them whenever I can play. I like it. I'm sure there's a updated spin they could do on it if they want to, but like, I hope it has something like that. Weirdly enough, I'm going to say I have a couple marketing points. I think it needs to have good timing with the launch. If they wait until the holiday season to launch it when a bunch of other shooters are coming out, or if they launch it right when the next Halo is getting announced or something, it's gonna be kind of awkward. It's gonna it's gonna suck. So I think, and it was probably a little bit more chance than many of us might believe that it launched in perfect timing, or, you know, they launched the like relaunch of it with such perfect timing before. But I do think some strategy needs to be put in there so they're not immediately getting overshadowed by like the AAA release of whatever other big shooter might come. I really, really, really want them to fix some of the marketing for the game. To me, they've made two major blunders with marketing with Splitgate 1. The first one, I'm sure, could be argued against, and perhaps I am completely wrong about this, but the entire original marketing push for Splitgate 1 was that it was Halo with portals. And I personally believe that marketing your game based on another franchise is just a recipe for disaster. Like, it provides short-term success, but I think it causes more problems long-term, and I think it turns away a lot of people that either don't want a game that's claiming to, you know, we went through that wave of Halo killers with like Killzone and stuff instead of having the game's original identity. And I think it really took away from the game's original identity. And I think part of it is the game didn't have a consistent identity. How many times am I going to say this word? Whenever it first launched. But nowadays, like, they're going to have that locked in better. But also, I think it creates some weird expectations. Like, I went into it, well, I didn't even go into it. I had already played a ton of Splitgate by time that marketing came around. And I was really confused because overall gameplay-wise, it doesn't feel that much like Halo. Like, team shooting is valuable, but it's not a very team shooting-focused game. It's a lot more twitchy, and sure, it has the Halo-inspired gun layout, but like, it feels a lot more like Unreal with the quick death time of almost Call of Duty or something rather than Halo to me. And so I always felt like it was just weird in that regard. And I just don't think it's healthy to build a new game based on the marketing of another game. The second major marketing blunder, they kind of repeated with this tease of Splitgate 2 here, is that they kept basically convincing people that the game was shut down. And that is extremely upsetting. The number of people that I've gotten in comments being like, oh, what's that game? Is that the one that shut down? Man, I wish Splitgate was still playable. Because when they announced that support for it was ending, their wording sounded like the game was just over and that they shut it down or whatever. And a lot of people were convinced of that. And I don't feel like they did a great job of conveying that. And obviously they went on to do other community events and tournaments and whatever. But I think they missed that clarification window at the time. And then same thing again with this trailer. they're saying say goodbye to Splitgate, which makes it sound like it's like they. I don't think this is totally their fault that people are misunderstanding it, but I do think they have to be more careful because people keep thinking that the game is shutting down, which really hurts a small shooter like this. Like, I don't know. And ultimately, I want the game to still have that arena feel. Like, I really don't want them to pivot into a BR or an extraction shooter or whatever the trendy thing is. Like, I think we need more representation of core first-person shooter gameplay in this market, both because I think it's just underserved as a market now, but also because I think we need diversity in the types of shooters available. When you look at like the popular games and it's all extraction shooters or all BRs, it kind of hurts the genre as a whole. And so having more successful examples of different types of first-person shooters, I think is huge. And currently the arena kind of standard deathmatch style shooter is very underrepresented right now. And so I would love to see them continue focusing on that. Regardless, I am just all in the Splitgate camp. I'm a huge fan. I've been enjoying it for years. I cannot wait to see what comes of Splitgate 2. In the meantime, I'm going to be putting some more hours in again into Splitgate 1, so I hope you can join in, get some playing going. It's available on all platforms. It is free to play. There are bots if, you know, playlists aren't super full or whatever, but you won't really, like, if you're not a super strong player, you won't necessarily notice that, but it does bother me from time to time. But ultimately, like, you get to play. Actually, I guess that's a final non-numbered request. I want them to have a server browser so that we can do like crazy custom stuff. But yeah, that's it. I'm just super stoked, and I wanted to share it because, like I said, a lot of people still think the game is just gone or dead or whatever, and it's not. And it looks like we're getting a beautiful UE5 Splitgate 2 soon, which is extremely exciting. Hope you enjoyed. Go check out my playlists on Splitgate videos if you want to learn more about the game, so you can get ready for the new one to come. And remember to be kind. Rewind.